Apologetics Empire.
Welcome. Today we will be looking at this massive online apologetics movement and how can each Christian take part in this apologetics empire. So I am your brother in Christ. I do Christian YouTube videos.
I am Elle ISO Elohim. I specialize in creating illustrations, writings, and songs, all for the glory of God.
Vocab Malone is my name. I used to rap a lot. Now I rap a little. And I really transitioned into apologetics out of evangelism is kind of how that happened. And now especially urban apologetics, focusing on number 1, Hebrew Israelism, number 2, Islam, number 3, everything else. And so it's been good to really exercise that on social media, trying to realize what platforms work. And so for me to do apologetics on social media, that includes YouTube, and that includes comedy and edge and satire, yet still being serious. And one thing I love to do is to stop, collaborate, and listen. So I work with David Wood and a bunch of other idiots, and we have a lot of fun, but hopefully communicate truth with comedy as partially the vehicle for the education. So here I am, Vocab Malone.
So, you being one of the founders of this apologetics empire, according to David Wood, what is your vision for it? No pressure.
We're finally getting to a place on YouTube, and we can say social media in general, where there's a few heavy hitters, and I kind of mean that in the sense of influence, right? It's not about who's better. It's not nothing like that. It's just certain people's stuff and the way they frame things takes off on certain platforms. Primarily, we're talking about YouTube here, right? But there are other social media platforms. We had a meeting earlier this year, and one of the men spoke at length about Instagram and how to do things on there. And you kind of realize, whoa, it's like an entirely different animal, you know? And but we want to consider those things. But at the same time, there's a realization that focusing helps. And so we're really focusing there on YouTube. So you're starting to finally see some people getting some decent sub counts, some decent videos that are responding to all these atheist attacks, you know, and they've really got a head start on us, you know, when you look at apologetics online, and we're kind of catching up slowly but surely. And so what it is Apologetics Empire is the idea that some of those folks who are in the fight at the forefront and those who are trying to come up, you know, be part of that fight in more serious ways, get together and share ideas. How do we make better thumbnails and titles? I'll give you a quick example. Interview with Greg Koukl. You know, that's cool. Who knows who Greg Koukl is? The people into apologetics. So think of something else. You can put his face on it. You can say, I mean, you can put it in the description, but you need to try to think, how do I get people who are not already into this? Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Interview with the man who teaches you how to ask questions. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but you see what I'm saying? Something, you know, you kind of think of these ideas and you realize we're in this kind of little weird bubble, and, you know, and so we're addressing people and we're dropping names, and we don't realize, like, we're not just trying to talk to people who are already into apologetics. And so we try to think how to branch out past that. So we're trying to help each other, right? And then you have people come along and say, well, here is a way to do apologetics in relation to current news events. Now, that's not for everybody, right? But some people, that's what they're going to do. That's what they're going to be part of. And so we help each other learn how to do that. And everyone needs to at least have ability about how to integrate apologetics in current events, even if that's not their kind of their stilo, right? So John McCrae is a perfect example of that. Another example, you know, what do you mean? Another example is like, all right, how do we make our stuff look better? So Cameron Bertuzzi comes and he makes the stuff look really good, and he's like, okay, here's some ideas about how to make your stuff look better, right? And everyone may not do exactly what he does all the way, but you definitely want to know that information. So it's that kind of open sharing, see, because we're not perfect. We don't all agree with each other all the time, whatever, right. But we can have more unity, I think, than the Kemet's. That's a conscious community, folks. the atheists and everyone else, because they just always end up fighting with each other. And Christians should have somewhat of an ability to not do that. And so we have to realize, hey, this is kingdom building. We get it. There's a certain form in which we could say this is competition. But we realize ultimately there's a bigger goal here. So let's get together and link up. And so far, so good. You know, we're learning a lot. People are coming up, and now there's a new crop, and there's younger guys coming up, and more ladies are getting involved. And so it's really cool to see. And then people are branching out into things like TikTok and all that. And so it's good to see. So the idea there is just to kind of make a splash, make a dent, and have some synergy and momentum together. And I've been very happy to be part of it. And I've seen a lot of good things, especially behind the scenes. You know, we got a couple group me message groups where we, trade ideas and make fun of each other and stuff like that. And we even had this YouTube conference. When I say YouTube, I don't mean it was going to be on YouTube. I mean, most of the speakers were going to be YouTube apologists. And, coronavirus had other plans, but we had this thing where almost all the speakers were going to be YouTubers, which is very different. You've never seen an apologetics conference where the bulk of the speakers are mainly essentially the reason they're known is from YouTube. Right. So that is something we still want to do, but we shall have to revisit that issue now and see when's a better time. So stuff's still happening. And again, I'm glad to be a part of it, even if I can, I'm kind of I'm kind of the caboose, I'm sort of the back of the train, and because of the obscure stuff I deal with, I get it. I'm not going to be, number one, number two, number three, number four, but I'm glad to be around. I'm glad to be hanging around, you know what I'm saying? And so that's all right. Cause I'm kind of going to do I'm going to kind of do what I do no matter what. To an extent, I'm kind of stubborn that way. And so I hope people pay attention, but at the same time, I'm like, I got to do it anyway, And so that's what it is, at least for me. But it's good to see people coming up, especially my man. I'll give you a perfect example. Adam Coleman, True ID Apologetics. You look at his stuff, he's been involved and just so much improvement. And he's like the perfect apologist in so many ways to me. And, it's good to see more and more people just coming up. You just, you kind of smile and you're glad and you're just glad to watch it happen in a sense, and be part of it. So it's exciting times.
I think you touched on some really important stuff in there that I don't want to breeze over too much because you touched on unity. And I think that's one of the most important things in this Apologetics Empire because as Ephesians 4 and Paul emphasizes so much, like we need to be unified. We're all under the same God. Well, all of us Christians who are truly following him. And we need to do this mission together because we each have our pieces and parts. Like you said, you have such a niche specialty, but it's so important and so many lives are impacted by the work that you do. But not everyone dives into what you do. But that doesn't mean they're any less important just because they're a foot or an eye or an ear or any of that. So I love looking at you as an example, hoping that we can all hopefully step up a bit.
Agree. And again, I'm just happy to be part of it. And it's cool to see, I have sort of, my own things I like to see happen. I really want to see urban apologists, so-called, be integrated more into the mainstream kind of conversations. I want to see that. I also want to see more kind of art. And when I say art, I kind of mean it in a broad category. Yes, art, and that's an example, which is great. That's an example of what I mean, but sort of the creatives being involved with apologetics as well. So you have like this creative aspect that hopefully touches the emotions and the eye and the ear, but also, is also hitting people's thoughts, so to speak. I like to see more of that. And, I have a certain, hey, I believe in unity and I know everyone's on the same page, but, I do have things that I think are helpful for apologetics. And so I like to at least have it be part of the conversation, not shoving it down people's throats, but Reformed theology and presuppositional methodology in a certain ministry. At least like the people being able to have a conversation about it. I'm not trying to force anything on anybody, but those are things I talk about as well. They're not the most important, but they're part of what I discuss as well. And I think that's important for people to be able to do as well. And then one other thing I've become interested in recently, and I haven't done too much with it, is kind of the folks on your guys' end of the spectrum as far as age. So I recently did a show where I called it Apologetics Youth Empire. And everyone on there was like, I think 18 to 29. You know, they were all younger guys and stuff like that doing apologetics and different platforms. And that was cool to talk to them and see what they're doing. So I want to kind of keep an eye on that too, because I think that's good news, you know?
And that was really epic, actually, for us too. Yeah. So since we saw that video, which was super funny, because I was like super not feeling good, about to go to sleep. Then I saw your video and I was like, oh, it's vocab. I got to jump on there for a couple minutes, and then ended up staying the whole time. And we're pretty actively involved in those Discord communities now. And it's been really awesome to see that, you know, Youth Apologetics Empire to grow. And that's been a really cool opportunity.
Good.
For, you know, bringing that into light and helping that community grow as well.
So on that note, what can Elle and I do to further the Apologetics Empire?
Well, I mean, really, it's kind of like basically making good content, you know, and just kind of consistently doing it. And just plugging away, and like that's really sort of, I don't know, it right now, because the idea is to inspire and encourage, and to an extent maybe educate. You know, we're all educating each other, folks, and then kind of see who takes to it and who does what, and then kind of we sort of revisit these issues down the road and see, all right, who can we work with and how, you know what I mean? And so really it's about just sticking in there for the long haul, because, you know, gaining 1,000 subs is a hard, you know, bump to get over. You got to do that. And then you got to keep on improving things. And then you got to, you know, so you just, this is like this war of attrition almost. So really just keep on plugging away and doing that. I mean, that's really the most important thing. And we're kind of, I don't know, you know, I don't necessarily know what step 2 is. I mean, a lot of the ideas we had sort of have been put on hold, you know what I mean? But that doesn't mean it's permanently, you know, like that forever, you know? And so we're kind of in a holding pattern, as it were. But, you know, it'd be interesting to see what transpires at the end of this year, because I do know some of us are getting together, I believe in November in Rhode Island. And so we'll kind of reconnect there and see what's popping.
Now, is that for a conference, or is that just like
sort of? This is the academic side of things. You know, every group of professionals, I guess is the way I could put this, has professional societies, and these professional societies check each other. They bring new ideas into the community, right? They have trade journals, this kind of thing. It's sort of a common thing, whether you're a dentist or an archaeologist or someone involved in the highest levels of logistics management, you know. Well, evangelical theologians have something. Evangelical Theological Society, aka ETS, it has an annual meeting. You know, a couple thousand people, you know, it's not huge, obviously. Get together once a year, read papers to each other, buy books, make connections, et cetera, et cetera. And a number of the YouTube folks out of us who are interested in that sort of thing, we get together and, you know, hang out with these scholars. It's kind of like our version of rock stars. You know, hey, there's Tom Schreiner. He wrote that book on New Testament theology. And, oh, look, you know, that kind of thing, right? And so we do all of that. And that's a place. So that's it's not like an apologetics conference at a church. There's like a high level nerdy, you know, thing. And, you know, anybody with certain credentials, you know, you got to agree to a statement of faith and pay dues, can be an ETS. You know, just go to the website and see what it is. And then if they decide, they can also go to the annual meeting, right, as well. But it's not your normal apologetics conference. Like, it doesn't have the popular speakers necessarily, although some of them will be there. It's more like has the guys who the popular speakers learn from. And so you go, and everyone there is like knowledgeable in their field, but they may not be necessarily the most like engaging, but you're there for information and stuff like that. So it's a different kind of thing, because you're essentially hearing papers read, but you're kind of hearing cutting edge stuff in the world of evangelical, theological, and philosophical debates. And then at the end of it, they usually will have some apologetics conference as well, sort of at a local church. And the idea there is, since we've already got these apologists in town, let's do a conference together. If we can find a church that can put up the money, because it's very expensive, because they're not cheap to put together. So it doesn't always happen, but hopefully it'll happen again this year. And so there is a apologetics conference at the end of it. But usually when I say we, I mean kind of like my little merry band of men. They're usually not speakers. We just kind of go and hang out, because we're already in town. So yeah, anybody could kind of go in a sense. I encourage them to go. They'll be exposed to good information and good academics. It began like in the late 40s. Yeah, ETSJETS.org. And the reason why it's JETS, because they have a journal. It's called the Journal of the Evangelical Theological Society. And you just go there, and the website is not meant to impress you. It's just meant to give you information. And then you can kind of see what's going on, and then you can try to join in the fun. The next one is November 17th and 19th, 2020, and the program theme is Christianity and Islam. So that'll be...
Ooh, that sounds so good.
Yeah, so that's good stuff. You got it.
I love research and diving in, and especially Islam and Christianity, I would say, are the two religions I know the most about. Like, I know about Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons too, and I'd like to dive in a bit more into apologetics in those fields, but Islam and Christianity is what I've been focusing on lately. But for those who that's not necessarily their cup of tea, what are some suggestions for how everyone can get involved in the Apologetics Empire? Because we do all have our own giftings, like I was talking about earlier.
If there's somebody involved who's kind of in, I don't know, the official group or whatever, I think the best thing is to try to just make yourself known to them. So, maybe become a moderator on their channel, maybe become one of their patrons, these kinds of things. I've seen you guys do some of these kinds of things, and you kind of just let it be organic, because it's not going to be some automatic thing. It's sort of like slowly but surely, and then we see what's what. I doubt, honestly, if I would even be able to be involved unless I had a close connection with David. I mean, maybe I would. But if you look, you got John McCrae, he's got 50,000 subs, and then everyone else has even more, So it's like, I'm sort of at the bottom end of that if it's just a sub count, right? And so it's just like this slow process of getting to know people and continuing to do good work. And so I would say, if you're like, hey, these are people that I see what they're doing and I'm down with this, I would say, like, try to be involved in some way in the ways you can be involved. And I do think there's something to be said for sort of, making yourself available and being present and kind of having a humble attitude and supporting people whose work you believe in. And then one day, it'll be where, you're, quote, in their position, and they'll be gone, and there'll be people younger than you and people coming out, wanting to do the same thing with you. So you just come around, try to get involved, become moderators, become patrons, things like that, make yourself known, help, I think that's a good way. But, this is to everyone watching. One thing not to do is, it's one thing to be persistent, but it's, you also don't want to be a bugaboo. You don't want to be asking like, hey, every week, hitting up Frank Turek. Hey, can you be on my show? Hey, can you be on my show? It's like, it's like there has to be sort of a within reason kind of thing where you realize, because you kind of realize even if you did get, say you bothered, somebody bothered Frank Turek for a year straight and they finally interviewed him, you realize that one interview doesn't really make or break a channel, and you kind of see like, okay, it's a bump, it helped, but really it's long term your content you're doing. And the next thing you know, people hit you up and they want to be on, they'll want to be the ones we on. One thing I sometimes tell people to do, and it's maybe a little bit different because it's sort of Christian ministry, and so I get that. One thing that they say though in some of these YouTube tutorials, they'll say try to collaborate with people who are sort of roughly in your, as far as who you kind of expect to be like, yeah, let's do it, roughly sort of in your general area. So you hit somebody up and it's like, you understand, you're in a similar place, and that's the best way to do it, because then the cool thing is you actually kind of grow together as you're going. And again, these things all change. Norm Geisler died somewhat recently. R.C. Sproul died somewhat recently. Ravi Zacharias died somewhat recently. What I mean by that is the apologists and theologians who dominate for literally decades with massive media ministries, eventually they leave a legacy behind, but they're gone. And the question is like, who's next? Who did they train? Who did they work with? And then it's the time, And so there's a certain level of just kind of like patience and just grinding away. And you realize like everything's going to change, in the sense of like the platforms are going to change, the questions are going to change, what they allow us to do on social media is going to change, all this stuff changes. And then, TikTok's not the final new social media platform, you know what I mean? So it's popular, but remember, it's almost like, it almost seems like a distant memory that things like Vines were around, which is sort of the predecessor to TikTok, or Snapchat. Snapchat's not really hot like it was, right? It's crazy. You just don't know. And so my point is like, we got to be adapted and moving and all that with things that go. Don't just look at what's already there, kind of think, okay, what's going to happen? What's next? And position yourself for those things. And I think if people kind of have that long-term vision and they don't kind of think there's a quick, easy fix, I think that'll really serve them well, because then they won't get disappointed with the little, things where someone doesn't hit you back or it doesn't work out. You kind of just have this long-term vision and realize, it'll come around again. It'll work out. You know what I mean? And it's a lot of it just has to do with attitude, man, because you see a lot of people come and go. A lot of it has to do with their sort of attitude about how they're in this thing, because it's easy to get bumped off. Once things get rough, as they do, your videos are going to get taken down. Atheists are going to come after you, XYZ, right? Mm-hmm. And so what's your attitude? That's going to really affect your ability to sustain long term, And so be a happy warrior is how I would end that answer to that question.
That, and also keeping your eyes focused on Christ, what you're actually doing this for. I think that's a huge advantage we have over a lot of other channels. If they're whatever they're doing, that's not Christ oriented. If we're Christ oriented, we're keeping our eyes on him. And even if we pass away, what we built as far as the lives that we've touched, the ministry that we've done, could inspire and move others to do even greater things than what we did. So as far as the apologetic side goes, what sort of resources or books should be focused on?
Well, first of all, just a bit about reading. Reading is essential. And really, if a person can do it and, take sacrifice, getting some schooling at some level is so important. Look, not everyone can. I get it. Okay. Not everyone needs to. So there's not a diss to anyone, but I'm just saying, the younger you are, the more likely you can do it, and it's worth it. The reason I say that is because a big part of what you do when you go to seminary and whatnot is reading. And the good thing about the reading is you're essentially forced to do it. You're forced into the discipline. Very, very few people have proper enough discipline to read the amount that we need to read to be as sharp as we do. And we also don't always know what the best resources are. And also, we don't always do so in a sustained fashion where we read on one topic in depth. So I'm going to actually start out there and say, look, if you're thinking about going to some school of some kind that'll get you sharper on your philosophy from a Christian perspective, I believe you should focus on, or your theology, your apologetics, do it. Don't delay, do it. Places are lowering their prices right now and doing more and more virtual stuff. Now is the time, people. So that's a great resource. And then you may be like, well, they don't teach the apologetic issues. Yeah, they don't teach Hebrew Israelism. They don't teach how to combat that at school. What you do is you get the tools and the stuff, and then you apply it to your context, right? So that's one thing. But then, there's lots of great book lists. You just put in top apologetic books. I did a show one time, it was top 50 apologetic books, I think. And, there's a lot of good stuff. I do think it's fundamental. I mentioned Greg Kokel earlier. Everyone does need to read tactics. I'm going to promote Greg Bonson, Always Ready. I think those two things really go good together. And then sort of a general apologetics book. I would recommend John's Frame books called Apologetics, and it's for second edition. First edition is Apologetics for the Glory of God. But if that's not your cup of tea, maybe you want to get even the Josh and Sean McDowell, Evidence That Demands a Verdict, or even William Lane Craig's, Reasonable Faith. A book like kind of has all the topics inside of it, and you kind of, that way you get some of the basic information. And then I do think it's important to start focusing on things. I realize we want to answer everything and we get embarrassed when we don't know the answer to some science question. But at the end of the day, I think the best work is done by specialists. And specialists maybe means you got 2 or 3 things you focus on. But really, the best thing to do is to focus on a few things and just be like, this is what I'm going to do. And the reason why you maybe focus on something is because it's important, and also it's passionate for you. And your specialists, what you specialize in can change during your career, right? It can change, and that's okay. That's something that's done. So my point by saying that is, once you sort of realize, okay, here's a key area, then you seek out books that kind of focus on some of those areas. So I'm going to deal with the thorny issues in the Old Testament. So, that the answer for that person doing that kind of apologetics for what books they should read is a little bit different. You need to go get Paul Copan's God a Moral Monster and start there and get his bibliography, and then just and go from there, right? And then if a person says, well, I'm going to focus on New Testament Christology, that's a different set of things. If a person says, I'm going to focus on textual criticism. You see what I'm saying? And so I really think it's important to kind of read, especially in those areas you're kind of going after. Now, I realize not everybody knows, but that really is the best thing to do, just to bear down and really go after a few key things, because we've all got limited time and no one is an expert in everything. And if you think about any college class you've ever taken, guess what? It's usually, at least should be, taught by a person who's a specialist in that area. And maybe they have some other things they know about, but they're probably not a great car mechanic. Maybe they are, but most likely, if you're going to learn how to fix cars, you would have a different teacher. And so my point is, become that. And that's okay. And you may say, well, then everyone won't. Yeah, you just got to deal with it's not going to be for everybody. That's just how it is. And so be all right with that. And so I think it's important to really, boom, go in a few key areas. And so I do encourage, actually, in the year 2020, specialization. I think there's enough of us that we can specialize. And I think that's important, And so read in those areas.
No, I agree. And I don't actually think for most people that a traditional college degree is what is needed, but I do highly recommend classes. And I do think that there are lots of opportunities for many people who maybe even can't afford them. For example, for me, and I would highly recommend this for anyone who is still either in high school or just graduated. I found opportunities where I got complete scholarships for classes over the summer, and I got to take Old Testament survey and New Testament survey and be in different programs that were so influential and incredible for my growth in Christ, and really connecting with other members of the body of Christ and really seeing what it means to live as the body and to be the church. And I think those are incredible opportunities that really aren't talked about too terribly much. We often think of college as something that, it's just so expensive and we have to do all the normal classes too. And I think that there are a lot of things that are overlooked. Another thing for people who might be struggling with finance as far as classes go is there are actually lots of free resources online. Free college classes. One of these great resources is Christian University, and that's actually being posted in the chat. And what they do is they have awesome courses that you can take the whole college courses. There are teachers there to help you go through it, and you don't have to pay anything. The only time that you would ever have monetary involvement is either if you want to donate or if you actually want your credentials of bachelor's or master's or doctorate or whatever it is after you've already taken the classes. And if you don't want to spend that money or don't have that money to spend, you still have all that great resources and that great knowledge, and you can go and use that without needing necessarily that certificate, that paper, because you have everything you need to equip yourself.
No doubt. Yeah. It is, in a manner of speaking, easier than ever.
Yeah. It's incredible.
That's right.